The Amazon is known as the largest rainforest on Earth. But what if the real story isn't the size at all? Because without understanding what truly shapes this place, the most extraordinary locations across the basin lose the meaning that makes them unforgettable. So, before we travel to the most remarkable wonders of the Amazon, we'll begin with several fascinating facts, details that reveal how this ecosystem works, why it looks the way it does, and what makes it unlike any other landscape on the planet. And once you understand these facts, the places we visit later, especially the final three, will look completely different. The Amazon covers an area so large that it's almost impossible to visualize. It stretches across more than 5.5 million square kilometers. That's close to 2.1 million square miles, nearly the size of the entire United States east of the Mississippi. But what makes this massive region truly extraordinary isn't just how far it reaches, it's how it functions. And the deeper you look, the more the Amazon behaves less like a forest and more like a living, breathing organism. One of the most surprising forces shaping this ecosystem begins thousands of kilometers away, on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Every year, roughly 180 million tons of Saharan dust drift across nearly 7,000 kilometers, or about 4,300 miles, carried by winds that sweep over the ocean. When this dust settles over the Amazon, it delivers the phosphorus the forest depends on. Without this steady supply of nutrients from Africa, large parts of the Amazon would slowly weaken. This unexpected connection, desert to rainforest, is one of the most important relationships on Earth, and most people never hear about it. Another factor shaping the Amazon is its rain cycle, which works very differently than you might expect. The forest doesn't just receive rain, it generates it. Each tree releases water vapor into the air through a process called transpiration. Multiply that by hundreds of billions of trees, and the Amazon pushes so much moisture upward that it creates its own weather systems. A single large tree can release more than 1,000 liters of water per day, that's roughly 260 gallons, into the atmosphere. This forms what scientists call flying rivers, vast corridors of moisture flowing through the sky. Some of these atmospheric rivers carry more water than the Amazon River itself, and the places they reach, thousands of kilometers away, depend on that moisture to survive. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. The Amazon's atmosphere and its rivers share a strange symmetry. On the surface, The waterways branch like veins, flowing across thousands of kilometers, almost 4,000 miles, from the Andes to the Atlantic. Above them, invisible streams of air follow surprisingly similar paths. It's as if the forest has two circulatory systems, one on the ground and one in the sky. And this dual network helps explain why the Amazon can endure even during long dry spells. The forest is constantly redistributing water, feeding itself even when rainfall temporarily drops. The structure of the forest reveals another unexpected pattern. The Amazon isn't just one continuous jungle. It's a mosaic of distinct ecosystems that shift dramatically over short distances. Some regions flood for months at a time, rising by more than 10 meters, which is about 33 feet. Others remain dry all year. One part of the forest grows on nutrient-poor white sand soils, creating habitats that look more like tropical savannas. Another rises on ancient, mineral-rich ground that supports some of the tallest trees in South America. These contrasts explain why two areas, only a few kilometers apart, barely 2 miles, can host completely different species. Speaking of species, the Amazon's biodiversity is almost impossible to grasp. In 1 hectare of forest, an area about the size of a soccer field, you might find more than 300 tree species. For context, that's more tree diversity in a single hectare than in many temperate countries combined. And when it comes to wildlife, some studies suggest that a 10 square kilometer area, just 4 square miles, can hold more species of ants than the entire British Isles. This density changes how scientists study the Amazon. It isn't enough to sample one area. Each ridge, each riverbank, each patch of forest can reveal an entirely new chapter of life. But biodiversity isn't just biological, it's cultural. The Amazon basin is home to more than 300 indigenous groups, speaking dozens of language families. Some communities maintain traditional knowledge systems so precise that they can identify hundreds of plant species without hesitation. Others preserve oral histories spanning centuries, mapping rivers, flood cycles, and seasonal winds with remarkable accuracy. And in a few remote regions, there are still isolated groups who choose no contact with the outside world. Their presence reminds us that the Amazon isn't just a natural space. It's a cultural landscape shaped by thousands of years of human interaction. Another layer of the Amazon story lies underground. Beneath the forest floor lies a hidden network of ancient soils enriched with charcoal. These dark soils, known as terra preta, weren't formed naturally. They were created by pre-Columbian societies more than 2,000 years ago. These communities mix charcoal, food scraps, ash, and organic waste to build nutrient-rich ground that still supports unusually fertile plant life today. Even more remarkable, this engineered soil regenerates itself over time. It's one of the most resilient human-made ecosystems ever discovered. The forest soundscape holds another surprise. While some regions erupt with noise from insects, monkeys, birds, and frogs, others fall into near-complete silence. In certain parts of the understory, especially during specific hours of the day, sound is absorbed by dense vegetation and humid air. The absence of echoes creates an environment where even a small movement feels amplified. This acoustic stillness contrasts sharply with the thunderous rainstorms that follow, dropping millions of liters of water in minutes. And one final detail reveals just how dynamic this environment truly is. During the wet season, parts of the forest turn into a massive aquatic world. Fish swim through flooded tree trunks, pink dolphins move into the submerged canopy, and fruits fall directly into water where specialized species wait to eat them. It's a forest that transforms into a freshwater sea, an ecosystem built on constant change. Understanding these forces, nutrients from the Sahara, atmospheric rivers in the sky, the mosaic of ecosystems, ancient human engineering, and the shifting flood cycles, reshapes how we view the Amazon. And as we move into the most remarkable places across this basin, these insights will help each location reveal its deeper story. Manaus is one of the most unusual cities on Earth, a modern urban center built in the heart of a rainforest that stretches for thousands of kilometers in every direction. What makes it so compelling isn't just its location, but how it came to exist at all. During the rubber boom of the late 19th century, Manaus became one of the richest cities in South America. Wealth flowed in so quickly that the elite imported European architects, Italian marble, and even French ironwork. Materials that traveled more than 7,000 kilometers, nearly 4,350 miles, through dense jungle and along winding rivers. The result was the Teatro Amazonas, an opera house so elaborate that it feels almost surreal against the backdrop of the Amazon. But Manaus wasn't just shaped by human ambition. Its geography is just as dramatic. The city sits at the junction of dark, acidic waters flowing from the north and sediment-rich rivers sweeping in from the west. This meeting of extremes has shaped everything from local transport to the region's wildlife. And as the river widens beyond the city's edge, something remarkable happens. An effect so visually striking that early explorers struggled to explain it. It's here that the next part of our journey begins. Just outside Manaus lies one of the Amazon's most visually puzzling natural events. Two massive rivers flowing side by side without mixing. On one side, the Rio Negro moves with dark, tea-colored water. On the other, the Solimoens carries a lighter, sediment-rich current. For nearly 6 kilometers, almost 4 miles, these contrasting rivers run together in a perfect split, as if someone drew a boundary line directly into the water. The explanation is grounded in physics. The Rio Negro is warm, slow-moving, and acidic. The Solimoens is cooler, faster, and carries far more sediment. Their differences in density and speed prevent them from blending immediately. But the real significance lies in what this boundary represents. The beginning of the Amazon River, as most of the world knows it. Early explorers wrote pages trying to understand this phenomenon. Modern scientists still use it as a natural laboratory. And as the currents finally merge downstream, the darker waters begin to reveal their own story, one shaped by chemistry, ecology, and a rhythm that transforms entire landscapes. The Anavilhanas archipelago is a freshwater labyrinth unlike anything else in the Amazon. Stretching for more than 380 kilometers, around 235 miles along the Rio Negro, it contains thousands of islands, channels, and narrow waterways that change shape with the river's pulse. During the dry season, sandbars and elongated islands dominate the landscape. But when the river rises, the entire system transforms as water pours into the forest, creating hidden channels beneath the trees. What makes Anavilhanas scientifically valuable is its constant motion. Sediment shifts from year to year, forming new islands while others erode away. This ongoing reshaping influences everything living here. Pink river dolphins use these flooded corridors to reach feeding grounds. Fish migrate into submerged forests to spawn among branches. Birds nest in areas that only months before stood entirely underwater. Researchers often describe this region as a natural laboratory of hydrology and ecology. Each season tells a different story, revealing how life adapts to an environment defined by movement rather than stability. And as the islands gradually thin out and the waterways expand into broader channels, the character of the landscape changes again, introducing a river whose global scale defies almost every comparison. The Amazon River is so vast that it reshapes entire continents. During peak discharge, it sends more than 200,000 cubic meters of water per second into the Atlantic, enough to fill over 80,000 Olympic swimming pools every minute. But its true story begins far in the past. Millions of years ago, the river flowed westward into the Pacific. When the Andes rose, this ancient drainage system reversed direction, forcing water eastward and creating a river basin that now spans more than 6,400 kilometers, almost 4,000 miles. This river is not a single stable channel. It branches, splits, merges, and reshapes itself constantly. Sandbars move, islands drift, and banks collapse under the force of seasonal currents. For communities living along its path, navigation depends on understanding these shifts, reading patterns in the water that reveal depth, debris, or hidden channels. The Amazon also acts as a massive transportation corridor. Boats carry people, fuel, produce, and supplies across distances that roads cannot reach. It's the backbone of daily life for millions. And as the river narrows and the forest begins to crowd in closer along its edges, the environment starts to change once more, setting the stage for a region shaped less by open water and more by the dense, layered world of the rainforest. The Amazon rainforest is often described as a single ecosystem, but what makes it truly remarkable is how many worlds exist within it. In 1 square kilometer, less than half a square mile, you can find more tree species than in some entire countries. Yet, the forest survives on surprisingly poor soil. Almost all nutrients are stored above ground, recycled rapidly through falling leaves, decaying wood, and dense root networks. This tight system allows the rainforest to regenerate quickly, even after intense seasonal flooding. Another striking feature is the forest's vertical structure. The canopy forms a roof up to 60 meters high, nearly 200 feet, where countless species live without ever touching the ground. Light, humidity, and temperature shift dramatically with height, creating stacked microhabitats. Researchers often discover new species simply by climbing into the canopy, where conditions resemble a different biome entirely. But the rainforest isn't static. During the transition from dry to wet seasons, entire regions transform as water levels rise and paths disappear under meters of water. These shifts affect everything from animal movement to the spread of seeds. And as the forest gradually opens along certain riverbanks, an unexpected type of landscape emerges, one that looks nothing like the dense jungle surrounding it. Alto do Chão is one of the Amazon's most surprising landscapes, known for its clear waters and white sand beaches that appear only during the dry season. These beaches form as the Tapajós River drops by several meters, up to 10 feet, exposing sandbanks that remain hidden for much of the year. The clarity of the water comes from the river's low sediment load. Unlike darker tributaries, the Tapajós flows over stable, sandy terrain that keeps particles suspended at minimal levels. This allows sunlight to penetrate deeply, creating the turquoise tones that set Alto do Chão apart. The region's rhythm is defined by seasonal flooding. When the water rises, the beaches vanish and the forest becomes submerged. Entire groves turn into underwater habitats where fish feed on fruits and seeds that fall directly into the river. This cycle supports a wide range of species adapted to living between land and water. For local communities, these shifts determine where they fish, navigate, and gather resources. The seasonal transformation shapes everything from festivals to transportation routes. And as the river bends westward, and clarity gives way to darker currents, the landscape transitions once again, leading toward a remote city that thrives entirely on the waterways surrounding it. Iquitos is one of the world's largest cities, unreachable by road. Its isolation has shaped its identity for more than a century. The city's rapid rise began during the rubber boom of the late 1800s, when fortunes were made almost overnight. Wealthy traders imported European architecture, materials, and furniture, turning this remote settlement into a global trading hub. But when the rubber industry collapsed, Iquitos had to adapt quickly or disappear. Today, the city remains deeply connected to the rivers that surround it. Seasonal flooding can raise water levels by several meters, nearly 10 feet, forcing homes, markets, and walkways to adjust year after year. Much of daily life depends on boats that function as taxis, buses, and delivery vehicles. The forest begins just beyond the city limits, and its influence is visible in everything from medicinal plants sold in markets to traditional fishing methods used along the riverbanks. What makes Iquitos especially interesting is how urban life coexists with the surrounding wilderness. Modern infrastructure stands beside communities that rely on knowledge passed down for generations. And as the river widens beyond the city and leads deeper into quieter, more remote waters, it brings us into a region where the landscape transforms into a world defined by seasonal flooding and mirrored reflections. SIBERIA is often called the mirrored forest, and during the wet season the name becomes literal. Floodwaters rise until entire sections of forest stand partially submerged, turning the surface into a near-perfect reflection of the canopy above. What makes this region fascinating is how wildlife adapts to these seasonal changes. Fish move into flooded groves to feed on fruit. Pink river dolphins use submerged channels to access new hunting grounds. Even trees have evolved strategies to withstand months underwater. The reserve covers over 20,000 square kilometers, more than 7,700 square miles, making it one of the largest protected areas in Peru. But its importance goes far beyond size. Pacaya SIBERIA acts as a reservoir of biodiversity, sheltering species that depend on extreme seasonal flooding for survival. Researchers study everything from water chemistry to migration cycles here, using it as a benchmark for understanding how flooded ecosystems respond to climate variations. Human communities in the reserve rely heavily on traditional knowledge to navigate its shifting waterways. Routes that exist in the dry season vanish entirely once the rains arrive. And as water levels drop again, the flooded forests open into river corridors that guide travelers toward one of the most biologically intense regions in the Amazon. Tambopata is known for its extraordinary concentration of wildlife, and its varied landscape plays a major role in that reputation. Rivers wind past oxbow lakes and clay-rich banks that act as natural gathering points. These clay deposits are essential for many species. Large mammals visit them to neutralize plant toxins, while diverse bird communities descend in predictable patterns to feed on minerals. This behavior provides researchers with rare opportunities to observe species that are otherwise difficult to study in dense forest. One of the reasons Tambopata is so biologically rich is its mix of habitats. Elevation changes, forest age, and soil composition vary across relatively short distances. A single hike can pass through ecosystems that host entirely different plant and animal communities. In some surveys, just a few square kilometers, barely a couple of square miles, contained more tree species than exist across entire temperate regions. Seasonal changes shape life here as well. During heavy rains, rivers rise and cut new channels, altering migration routes and access to feeding grounds. And at the heart of this region lies a phenomenon that is both visually striking and scientifically important. An event shaped by color, sound, and tightly synchronized animal behavior. Macaw clay licks, known locally as colpas, are among the Amazon's most dramatic wildlife spectacles. At dawn, dozens, sometimes hundreds, of brightly colored macaws gather on exposed riverbanks to feed on mineral-rich clay. Scientists believe these minerals help counteract toxins found in the seeds and fruits that macaws eat, allowing them to safely digest foods that would otherwise be harmful. The behavior is so consistent that entire research programs are built around it, documenting patterns in feeding, social structure, and vocal communication. What makes clay licks especially interesting is the precision with which macaws choose them. Not all riverbanks contain the right mineral composition. Birds return repeatedly to specific sites, sometimes traveling long distances, dozens of kilometers or many miles, to reach the same exposed wall of clay. The timing is equally predictable. Activity peaks during certain months when fruiting cycles change, revealing how closely the bird's diet is tied to seasonal rhythms. These events also attract predators. Raptors circle overhead, waiting for an opening in the flock's defensive formation. The interplay between risk and reward shapes macaw behavior and creates one of the Amazon's most dynamic scenes. And as riverbanks fade into densely forested slopes, the terrain begins to rise, revealing landscapes far more vertical than travelers expect in the Amazon basin. Gokta Waterfall drops an estimated 770 meters, more than 2,500 feet, making it one of the tallest cascades in South America. Yet this massive waterfall remained largely unknown to the outside world until 2005, when its full height was measured and documented. The surrounding landscape explains why it stayed hidden for so long. Gokta sits within a steep, cloud forest region where dense vegetation, constant mist, and remote terrain make access difficult. Even today, reaching the base requires navigating trails that pass through small villages and humid forest corridors. What makes Gokta scientifically interesting is the interaction between elevation, humidity, and wind. The waterfall's height allows mist to rise far above the basin, creating microclimates where unique plants thrive. And as the trail leads back toward the forest edge, the landscape begins to flatten again, revealing an area where multiple cultures, countries, and ecosystems converge. Leticia sits at the meeting point of Colombia, Brazil, and Peru, a strategic location that shapes nearly every aspect of life here. Unlike many Amazonian towns, Leticia serves as a tri-border hub where boats, goods, and cultures intersect. Its markets reflect this mix. Colombian fruits, Peruvian textiles, and Brazilian products often sit side by side. The city's position along the river also makes it an essential stop for transportation routes that stretch hundreds of kilometers, hundreds of miles into remote regions. What makes Leticia particularly interesting is how it blends urban structure with rainforest proximity. Only a short distance outside the city, the dense Amazon canopy begins almost immediately. Local communities often rely on the forest for food, medicinal plants, and building materials, bridging modern infrastructure with traditional knowledge. The city is also a departure point for researchers studying freshwater ecosystems, as the nearby tributaries host diverse fish species adapted to shifting water levels. And as boats depart from Leticia into quieter channels, the scenery quickly shifts, leading toward a region where flooded forests, narrow waterways, and high wildlife density create a very different kind of Amazonian experience. The Coyabeno Wildlife Reserve in Ecuador is one of the Amazon's most accessible regions for observing biodiversity, thanks to its network of blackwater lakes and flooded forests. These ecosystems form when water levels rise during the rainy season, creating channels that connect lagoons, rivers, and forest basins. The acidity and clarity of the black water suppress certain organisms while supporting others, resulting in a unique mix of species not found in nearby whitewater systems. What stands out most in Cuyabeno is the concentration of wildlife around the lakes. Monkeys move through the canopy searching for fruit. River dolphins swim along the edges of submerged vegetation. Bird species gather in predictable patterns depending on water levels and time of day. This consistency makes Cuyabeno a valuable location for ecological research, especially studies on species behavior and seasonal movement. Local indigenous communities play a major role in managing the reserve. Their knowledge of plant uses, navigation routes, and animal behavior informs conservation practices and guides sustainable tourism. As water levels recede, the lakes narrow and forest paths reappear, revealing a gradual shift toward the upland terrain beyond. And it's here, as the forest opens, that travelers encounter a landscape so visually unexpected that it feels like it belongs to a different continent entirely. Caño Cristales is often called the River of Five Colors, but the phenomenon behind it is far more complex than the nickname suggests. The vibrant reds, yellows, greens, blues, and purples come from a single aquatic plant, Macarenia clavigera, which grows only in very specific conditions. It needs clear, shallow water, strong sunlight, and just the right flow rate. If the current is too fast, the plant detaches. If it's too slow, sediment covers it. This delicate balance explains why Caño Cristales appears brilliant in some months and muted in others. And as the terrain rises beyond the colorful channels, the landscape shifts dramatically, leading into a region defined not by rivers, but by towering cliffs, table mountains, and waterfalls unlike anywhere else in the Amazon basin. Canaima National Park spans nearly 30,000 square kilometers, more than 11,500 square miles, and is dominated by massive sandstone plateaus known as tipu. These table mountains rise abruptly from the surrounding landscape, some reaching more than 2,500 meters, or over 8,200 feet, creating isolated environments where species evolve independently. The tepui are so ancient, dating back nearly 2 billion years, that scientists consider them islands in time, holding plants and animals found nowhere else on Earth. One of Canaima's most striking features is Angel Falls, the world's tallest uninterrupted waterfall. Water plunges nearly 1,000 meters, over 3,200 feet, from the edge of Oyan Tepui, dispersing into mist long before it reaches the pool below. During the rainy season, the volume increases dramatically, and the falls create drifting clouds of spray that rise along the cliff face. But Canaima isn't defined by a single landmark. Its rivers cut through pink sand beaches, narrow canyons, and steep-walled valleys that shift color with the sunlight. Indigenous Piman communities have lived here for generations, preserving knowledge about the area's geology, weather patterns, and traditional pathways. As the tepui fade into the distance and the landscape opens once more, The journey comes full circle, bringing us from remote highlands back toward the vast, interconnected world of the Amazon basin, ready for a final reflection. The Amazon may look like a single rainforest, but each region we visited shows how complex it truly is, shaped by shifting rivers, seasonal floods, unique ecosystems, and cultures that have adapted to this environment for generations. The facts we explored at the beginning reveal how these places fit together, turning individual landscapes into parts of one interconnected system. And although we've covered some of the most remarkable locations, the Amazon extends far beyond them, with countless areas still changing, evolving, and being studied today. Thank you for traveling through the Amazon basin with us. If you'd like to explore more regions shaped by equally powerful forces, there are many more journeys ahead and more stories coming soon.